This is my enduro bike. It's a Zero Katipa, however you pronounce it. Today we're going to be talking about the Pinion Gearbox and the Gates belt drive on this bike. You wouldn't believe how many questions I've had in the last year about the gearbox on the bike, how the belt is, how the gearbox works, any problems, how's it run. So I'm going to cover everything in this video to tell you about my experience so far with the Pinion Gearbox. This is my enduro bike. I currently have a 12-speed gearbox on the bike, and I currently have the Gates carbon belt drive on it. I've tested the 9-speed gearbox and 12-speed, and there is some big differences between them, which I will get into. First off, how does the gearbox even work? It looks like a single speed, right? So we have one main drive with cog on the back, cog on the front, and then all the gears and all the shifting is done inside the box, which sits around the bottom bracket. So the weight is in a really good place. That means everything is housed in a box. You can't damage it, or there's minimal chance for damages. That is one massive upside. People have asked me literally, is this an e-bike? No, it's not an e-bike. It is a standard bike with a gearbox. And this here is a little battery that powers the electric shifting on the gearbox. There's two different methods of transmission you can buy currently for Pinion. I currently have the Smart Shift, which is electric shifting, and then you can also have Grip Shift, which is done by cable. So then you don't have any battery and you don't have the extra Smart Shift box on the other side of the bike for the shifting. How long does the belt last for? So Gates say that the belt will last 2 or 3 times longer than a traditional chain, which is about 19,000 kilometers. Or about 10,000 miles. That's quite long. So I've had this single belt on now for a year. I should probably change it, but I haven't. I've been checking this for signs of wear after most big rides and races, and there's still nothing on it. It still seems to be going sweet. How often should you service the gearbox? Pinion recommend about every 10,000 kilometers or 6,000 miles, depending on how often you ride. The rule of thumb is you want to service it every year, and to service the gearbox, it's as simple as using a syringe to change the oil in the gearbox. It's a really quick job. That's as much maintenance as you need to do. And I'm still fascinated actually. Whenever I finish riding and I go and wash my bike, I almost feel like there's a step missing. You finish rinsing the bike off and then you don't have to oil the chain, you don't have to degrease the chain, you just leave it as it is. I just make sure I wash up all the dirt and it's good to go for the next ride. Whereas the normal chain and drivetrain setup, you'd have to degrease it, clean it, scrub it, re-oil the chain, all that stuff. You don't get any of that with the belt drive. So how does the shifting work? Well, I currently have the Smart Shift system, which is the electronic unit that goes on the side of the gearbox to allow all the shifting to happen electronically, and you can control it on an app on your phone, so you can set different parameters, whether you want the shifting to be back and forward on the panels and all sorts of other stuff. The shifting is run off a little battery in here, which is in a waterproof case, so you don't need to worry about it in the elements or anything like that. This battery again is the one that came on the bike. I haven't touched it since, and that's been over a year of solid racing and riding, as you've probably seen on this channel. It will shift roughly, as soon as you shift, it'll take about 0.2 seconds to shift, which is really fast. And you can obviously shift with the gearbox without changing gear. Or without pedaling, sorry. Yeah, you can shift without pedaling. So if you're coming into a section and you know you need to be in a different gear to come out of a corner, you can actually set up before you exit the corner in the right gear. So that's a really big plus for me. Now, one thing I have actually noticed with this is that it is a little bit different when it comes to getting used to shifting. You have to almost treat this a little bit like a clutch in a car, in that if you try and put full power down, sprinting and change, the gearbox won't let you do it. What it'll do is it'll try and change, and if there's too much resistance, it just won't change. It's quite easy to learn. You ride it once and you'll understand what I'm talking about. So in that respect, you have to treat it almost a bit like a car, and let off the gas a little bit, shift, and then go again. Shifting, once this battery is charged, which takes 20 minutes, half an hour, it'll probably do about 10,000 shifts. So again, I don't know how long that is. I've been away on trips for literally months and not had to recharge the battery. It just lasts and runs and runs and runs. So if we talk about range of the gearbox, the actual range of the gears, I believe it is very close, and I'll put it on the screen now what it actually is. I believe it's very close, or if not bigger, than a 12-speed SRAM Eagle drivetrain. So you have super easy gears for pedaling up hills, and then you have harder gears for when you wanted to put the power down. So is the belt draggy? Now, this is a question so many people have asked. I do believe the chain and the cassette on a traditional drivetrain does move freer. It just does. That's just the way of metal on metal and oil on the chain. versus a belt and a metal chainring. But I can tell you now, when you're pedaling uphill and if you're worried if the dragginess is going to affect how hard it is to climb, it doesn't at all. Like, this is my climbing and descending. This is like my do-it-all bike. Bike parks, enduro, all mountain trail, hiker bike, anything. I do it all on this bike with this gearing setup. I've never felt like I'm like lost fitness or I'm having to work a lot harder than other people. It just works. There isn't any drag, any noticeable drag. So let's talk about gearboxes, because I've had 2 gearboxes on this bike, and that's because I wanted to test the 9-speed and the 12-speed box. So I originally had the 9-speed box on the bike, so that gave me 9 gears across the gearbox range. And it was still, I believe, the same range as the 12-speed box. The problem was, well, it's not really a problem, it's just different. The jumps between gears were bigger. As you can imagine, if you got the same range, the actual jumps between gears were larger. So there's been some times where I've been sprinting down a hill or in a downhill race, and there's been some times where I felt, oh damn, I wish I had a slightly harder or slightly easier gear, which is why I wanted to try the 12-speed gearbox. And that has solved that problem completely. I think it actually is a lot more efficient than my 9-speed box. It just feels more smoother, more efficient, and it is just better overall for my riding per se. So has the belt ever come off the bike? I'll be truthful and transparent. It came off once last year at TDS, which was a super muddy race where it was literally like peanut butter mud. This whole area was completely caked in mud, like really thick caked mud. And it did just push the belt off once when I was just practicing. That is the only time out of the hundreds of times I've ridden this bike that has happened. And the amount of time that's ever gonna happen when you're riding is probably gonna be slim as well. And it probably would have happened to a traditional chain anyway. So how much does the gearbox weigh in comparison to a traditional drivetrain? I think it's about 600 grams more than a full traditional group set from, say, SRAM. Some of you guys out there who are conscious of weight, that might be an issue, but for me, I like the added extra weight for the riding I am doing. I don't mind having an extra 600 grams if it is placed in the right point on the bike, which on this, because we've got the gearbox under the center of our mass, under the bottom bracket here, it is a massive advantage, I believe, rather than having some weight here, some at the back off the back of the bike, and especially having one of those stupid derailleurs off the back as well, which I couldn't tell you how many times I've been out riding and somebody has had derailleur problems, and I've literally looked down at my belt and said, you need one of these belts and you wouldn't have this problem. It baffles me how people still believe that derailleurs are more superior, and it baffles me that manufacturers are still making them. I suppose they make money, so that's why they make them. To have near enough, I mean, some derailleurs are like 700-800 euros, maybe even more, hanging off the lowest point of your bike at the back, which could literally hit anything, and then it's gone, you need a new one, is mind-boggling to me. So yeah, weight-wise, a little bit heavier, but all that weight is central underneath you. The bike maneuvers better, controls better, handles better, especially on those burly descents. Crank length, I've experimented a little bit with this. I have 165mm length cranks. I want to try some shorter cranks, so maybe 150, 155mm cranks, just to make it a little bit more compact. Do you need a special rear wheel to run a gearbox? For the Zero Katipa, however you say it. So for my bike here, I have a 142mm hub, I believe, and then there is a spacer for this belt guard. And then it is just a traditional 9-speed free hub body with a spacing kit on it. It's nothing special, but you can also run a single speed kit as well. Same idea, but it is just one cog, old school style. Is it quiet? Again, another common question I get. Well, I mean, you can hear my water bottle bashing around, but there is no chain slap. The belt's on its own little tensioner. There's no noise from this gearbox whatsoever. The only noise I've had from the gearbox is when this spring in this tensioner gets a little bit dry. You just oil it and then you're good to go. I can't get this bike to stand upright. Anyone got any tips of standing bikes up like this? Witchcraft. Get in. Ow! I broke my stick. That's the Pinion Gearbox. If you've got any more questions on it, pop them in the comments below, I'll get back to you. Yeah, there it is.